Hi, I'm Tamara Munzner, and now we're going to talk about marks and channels, which is chapter 5 of the book Visualization, Analysis, and Design. So, in previous lectures, we learned about the nested model, this idea of splitting things up into the four levels of domain, abstraction, idiom, and algorithm. And the focus today is going to be on how to systematically analyze structure at that third idiom level, particularly visual encoding idioms. So let's imagine we have some basic chart types, bar charts, scatter plots. How could we systematically analyze the structure of those? So we're going to break things down according to marks and channels. And marks are these geometric primitives that are going to represent items or links. And channels are going to change the appearance of those marks based on attribute values. So let's dive into that a little more. At the item level, we have three fundamental kinds of marks. These are these basic geometric elements. You can think of them as ink on a page or pixels on a screen. And the mark that represents a single item is a point mark. So one item, one point mark. We can also have these more complex mark types that represent many items at once. So data for many different things. That can either be a path, you can think of that somewhat like a line, where you're possibly connecting many different values. And then if we have that path actually wrap around and close up to form a boundary, then we're going to call that a poly. You can think of that like an area that has both the boundary and also the interior. And again, both paths and polys represent many items of data at once. Now, marks don't only have to be for items, they can also be for links. So imagine that we have a node link network type of data structure. Well, one thing we can do is use path marks to show connections between two nodes or many nodes. So we can use paths as connection marks. We can also use polys as containment marks. If we have any kind of a hierarchical structure, then we can um, create a polymark to actually represent that structure and use this visual phenomenon of containment to see that. Now, containment doesn't just have to be one level. We might actually have a multi-level hierarchy. Here's an example from Risch and Dwyer with these more complex Euler style diagrams where we actually see multiple levels of hierarchical structure at once. So this idea now that if we have a mark, we could have channels. We could control the appearance of that mark in some way that's somehow in proportion to or directly based on attribute values. Now, these channels have many, many names in the literature. Some people call them visual channels or visual variables or retinal channels or visual dimensions. So for our purposes, we're going to call them channels. Now, there's many channels. For example, where do you place things on a two-dimensional page, horizontally or vertically? Do you represent them as a symbol? Do you have some sort of one-dimensional size like width or height? A two-dimensional size like area? Do you color code them? Do you tilt code them to use orientation to show the value? There's all kinds of possibilities. This is an incomplete list. So putting these together, if we have these marks, which are geometric primitives, are points for one item or paths and polys for multiple items, and we have these channels that control the appearance of those marks, position, size, color, and so on. Well, it turns out that they're not all created equal. The channel properties are very different between the marks. So both the type and the amount of information that can be conveyed to our perceptual system as humans depends very much on the channel type. So we're going to do a deep dive into understanding more about that in this lecture. So let's go back to that idea of analyzing idiom structure as a combination of marks and channels. So let's start with a basic bar chart. What is going on here? Well, it seems clear that we're somehow height coding, right? How high these bars are is showing us an attribute value. And in fact, it's redundant. And not only is it how high the bar is, it's also what is the vertical position of the top of that bar. Those are both redundantly encoding the same attribute. What else could we do? Well, we could say, well, what if we don't want a height code? What if we actually want to be able to pay attention to both vertical position and also now horizontal position? Then we might choose to switch our chart type to a scatter plot where we're independently encoding in each of these one-dimensional directions. What else could we do? Well, we could color code, for example. Now we're showing 3 attribute values. We could size code by actually saying, well, what's the radius of that circle that we're using to represent that? Let's call that the spread. So now we're showing 4 attributes. Now, this idea that we might actually choose to use multiple channels at the same time to send a stronger message to our perceptual system, we're going to call that redundant encoding. So the nice thing about it is it really, really amplifies our signal. The downside, of course, is that we're using up channels that we then can't use to show another attribute, right? Here's an example where we've got, back to our example of a bar chart, right? We're height coding. As I said before, we're also vertical position coding. In fact, even the order of these, not only the vertical position, but the relative order, we're also using that. And in fact, here we're even color coding as well. So the same attribute is being used for multiple different channels. Now, the big, big question is, well, when should we use which channel? So there's a couple key principles that have been pursued for decades. Expressiveness of matching the channel type to the data type, and also effectiveness, because some channels really are better than others at conveying that information. So here we see, again, a subset of all possible channels. And let's think about this idea of ranking them. Now, one thing I've done here is I've actually split these into 2 sides. Now, this is not a coincidence. This structure mirrors 2 key things. It mirrors the structure of the human perceptual system, and it mirrors the kind of data that we talked about in the data lecture. So on the left here, we have the so-called magnitude channels. These are very well suited for showing ordered data, ordered attributes. So things like, position on a common scale, or width, or area, or even things like curvature. These are all, you can think of them as conveying how much of something there is. So these are a very good fit for the ordered attributes, both quantitative and often also ordinal. Now, on the right, we have the so-called identity channels. These are good for answering questions like, well, what is this? Not how much is it like the magnitude channels, but what is it, right? Is it blue? Is it red? Is it a circle? Is it a square? Is it in this region? Is it in that region? Even what direction is it moving? These are really well suited for categorical attributes. So this real fundamental split about, do we have our perceptual channels matching up with our attribute types? That is this idea of having an expressiveness match between our visual channels and our data. So, how much with which rank versus just, what is this? Now, it's also not a coincidence that this list is actually ordered vertically. So the effectiveness of the different channels, one of the main ways we can think about this is how accurately can we perceive that? That is, if we encode data with one of these channels, to what extent can the viewer decode that data back out? So these are actually arranged from the most effective near the top to the least effective near the bottom. So, for example, we're really good at making judgments about position if we've got a common frame of reference. We're still pretty good, but not quite so good if we don't have that common frame. We're not quite as good as noticing size compared to absolute position. Our ability to judge area, even a little bit less than that. Turns out we're really not very good at judging depth into the scene, this 3-dimensional position, or things like volume or curvature. So we're getting less and less able to decode all the data we want as we go down this list. Now, in the Marks and Channels 2 video, we're going to actually dive into some of the reasons behind these rankings. One thing I do want you to notice, though, is that spatial position is actually at the very top on both of these sides. So position along a common scale for the ordered attributes and which spatial region is something in for the categorical attributes. This is one reason we're going to spend a lot of time talking about approaches to layout, the use of space, of position, of size to convey information, because it is that very salient channel to the human perceptual system. Now, finally, we can also actually use channels to explicitly show groups, again, in a way that is built into our perceptual systems. So if we show things like containment, that automatically conveys hierarchical structure to our perceptual system. Similarly, with connection marks between nodes, we're going to convey this idea that those nodes are connected to each other. We can also use pretty much any of the identity channels, which, remember, are good for the categorical attributes, to show similar values of something is then going to convey similarity to our minds. So, for example, being in the same spatial region, that's using proximity to convey grouping information. Or any of the other categorical channels, right? If things are the same color, we're going to think of them as similar, or using the same symbol to represent them. So this is our first exposure to the idea of marks and channels. And if you'd like to see more, there's a lecture coming up that will go deeper into some of the perceptual underpinnings of this. All right. Goodbye for now.